Hello. So I'm thinking of talking a little bit about synesthesia again. Last time I mentioned that I mentioned a lot of things, but so maybe I'll recap a little bit to start. So last time we kind of mentioned that. Um, so if you don't know, synesthesia is basically a crossing of the senses that people talk about hearing colors or seeing sound. And so, so in the research, they basically will often focus on something like graphene color synesthesia, and that is basically like you assign letters a color, and um, so the letter A can be red, the letter B can be blue, letter C can be green or something like that. And um, so they actually have trained people to become synesthetic doing this, supposedly. It's kind of hard to nail down whether or not people are actually experiencing this, but they do claim to experience synesthesia after the training. So if it's real, it's quite interesting. So the study that found that, they actually found that the people were they did a visual IQ test, the visual component of IQ test, and they found a 12-point increase in IQ after they trained them, and that is pretty significant because so the control group saw almost zero increase. It was like 0.11 points or something, so it's very, very small. um, Now this is pretty interesting because there's some people who think that synesthesia might be related to savantism. And so savantism, if you don't know what that is, that's basically profound giftedness, but also it's usually associated with autism. So people will have a uh, usually a very specific ability to do something. So, like an extreme memory capability or extreme um, artistic ability or music ability or like photographic memory is a common thing. Um, but there's all different ways that someone could have a savant like skill. And um, and so that's usually associated with autism. And there is this guy named Daniel Tammet who is a savant and synesthete, and he has a TED talk where he basically kind of shows you how to think synesthetically. And one way he does this is he shows this complicated math problem. It's like 64 times, like, I don't remember what it was. It was like some other very large number, and he breaks it down into shapes instead of like symbolic math. And he does it where he shows like a grid of I think the other number was like 75, and he shows like, I don't know, some complex grid where it maps onto this math problem, and he shows how you can get the math problem much easier without performing like the traditional mathematical strategies. And this is fascinating to me because we could be teaching children how to do that kind of mathematics instead of doing it in the way that we typically think of, which is basically to line up these symbols and perform these like calculations that are all organized in rows or something like that. And so that got me thinking, do we really do we really perform mathematics in the best possible way? Are we really um, performing a lot of tasks in the best possible way that we could? Like, is our way of learning and thinking about the world as good as it could be? And another interesting thing there is that uh, what if in the past we were even thinking less well than we are today? And okay, so there's an important thing we should get into that is related to what was in the last video that I didn't cover here, and that is the idea that we are all synesthetic. So, for example, while we might not associate the letter A with red, we might associate the word red with the color red, and I would argue that that is synesthetic too. Um, it's just that society is training everybody to be synesthetic in that way. The word red has nothing to do with the actual color that we observe. It is just one that we've assigned to be related to that color. We could have assigned any sound to that color, but we've chosen the word and the sound red, spelled R-E-D, and that even that connection could be synesthetic. This symbolic connection to the sound that we make with our mouth, red, is associated to the symbols. So, the way I see this situation, okay, I forgot to mention the other important bit of this puzzle is that it appears some of the leading hypotheses right now are that all infants are synesthetic, and so that is pretty interesting because um, we may like start off hyper synesthetic and associating everything, but then we only keep what is there um, after we decide what is important to keep. So we may initially, like, say we see a dog, we might initially associate a lot of words to this creature. Um, but then we figure out which ones are not the correct words, and we start to neglect those associations in our mind. And then once some time passes, that is when we prune away the connections that led to those synesthetic experiences. And so there's some research that shows that people who have synesthesia as adults seem to have more connectedness in the brain. And that kind of gets into this whole idea of psychedelics, where they seem to increase the connectivity of brain activity. So, so where should we go from here? So the children being synesthetic is kind of interesting because maybe the people who are savants and synesthetes are kind of intentionally using their brain in novel ways that aren't trained by society. It's not something that is exclusive to them because of some biological reason, perhaps, but it has to do with the fact that society is only training us to be synesthetic in some exclusive domain. So, for most people, that is language and perhaps the way that we perform mathematics and uh, other things about the way that we see and go about the world. And so I think it's possible that we are not even close to the best possible way of using our brain. Instead, I think that we could we could have a new cultural programming of doing things like math or um, music or language and all these different things that we've already created. We can create fully new ways of seeing the world and doing things with what we know about the world. And I think there's a lot of potential there. We just have to kind of open our mind to the possibility that humans suck at what we're doing, actually, and try to get us somewhere new. And one way of going about this might be through the use of training people to be psychedelic and synesthetic, and maybe through the use of these compounds, we can try to open our mind that some of these weird ways of processing reality there might be something to them. There might be something that we can utilize about those uh, strange ways of experiencing reality. We could essentially train ourselves to do these savant like skills, perhaps. Um, so I'm not too sure where else to go from there in this video, but I hope that this has got you thinking about the different ways that we might be able to change our perception and mode of experiencing reality in ways that might increase the intelligence or whatever you want to call it. And yeah, so uh, for those of you, I'm sure most of you are people who watch or read my blog regularly. I'll leave the link to the project about synesthesia so that you can read it. And please subscribe. I'll make the quality of these videos better the more that I start to be able to do that. And so, if you'd like, you can join the Patreon. I kind of feel weird bringing that up. There are 10 patrons right now, though. Um, and if I had enough to not focus on trying to make money other ways, then I would put more time into doing projects like these. My kind of ultimate goal would be to do something kind of like Vsauce. I like that kind of thing where it's very artistic, very sciencey, very professional, and not just me standing here and telling you things, right? It would be probably more scripted. There'd be videos going on. I would get collaborations with artists. I kind of have some in mind already. And yeah, that could be interesting. And there's a lot of other things I can do if I was not tied to that, but I'm not even going to go into that right now. I'm just kind of being hypomanic right now, and I don't want to start rambling about that. Um, so another project I've been doing that I've been actually uploading to the Patreon is ketamine experiences. So someone sent me an EEG that I can show you. So there's the box of that. You can kind of see it. It's kind of hard to see, but basically, I've been taking EEG data to help someone who's doing research on ketamine. And so I've been doing these in depth reports as well that are on the Patreon. And eventually, I am going to upload them for everyone. I'm not planning to just uh, withhold those, but those are up there early for everyone, and it's probably going to be quite a while before I put them up in a blog post because I am basically waiting for something drastic to happen. And some of the experiences that I'm writing, they sound drastic, but it's not. It's not significant enough for what I am curious about. As of now, there is only one report that has EEG data, which I've uploaded pictures to. Um, and so, what I really want to see is that, so I have this cognitive atomization hypothesis that is kind of where I want that to go. So if you've not heard of that, it is basically the idea that blocking certain glutamate receptors kind of disrupts the frameworks and kind of skeleton of our cognitive experience of reality, where kind of all these different primed pathways in the brain, they kind of like brain activity essentially flows along these pathways of a kind of primed cognitive skeleton, if you will. And the idea with atomization might be kind of like a return to the pre associated state of experiencing reality. And I'll leave the project to that in the drop down section, whatever, the description. Um, yeah, I think people are interested in that topic as well. Lately, I'm kind of getting into synesthesia now, which I am going to attempt to connect them at some point, because infants are technically they haven't yet developed their cognitive skeletons. So yeah, and I think I'll leave it off there. This is kind of rambly, but maybe some of you find it interesting. Thanks for watching. Please like, or if you want, dislike, uh, and follow on the YouTube channel. And that's it. Goodbye.